I find most property managers are not comfortable setting up Facebook ads or using that tool. So I think it's an underutilized feature, and we're looking for ways to make it easier for people to do that. Just like email and texting, I feel like, since most operators are not marketers by training, right? Everything we do is trying to just give people accessible and easy to use tools. They don't require a lot of expertise. And then obviously you can build on it from there. So that's definitely the approach we take to all the different things we're building at StayFi.
Who's this? Oh, you're an entrepreneur? Oh, you're a real estate investor. Oh, you're trying to learn from those who did it. Well, come into the lab then. Put your white coat on, gloves on, notepad, and let's build, y'all.
Real estate experiment. What is happening, y'all? We have another episode here. A little, technical difficulties, but we're able to get through it. Today I have a pleasure of having Arthur Colker in the lab, which is the CEO and founder of StayFi, right? Am I correct? Did I get that?
That's totally right.
So I'm geeking out on this because, your name has constantly come up in the short-term rental space as a platform that we should all be tapping into. And by the way, I haven't rolled into mine, but I know at the end of this call, we will in real time, because I want to make sure I got on the air with you to educate other practitioners like us in the hospitality space, whether you're an Airbnb, short-term rental, single family, or you got boutique hotels, whatever the case might be, how you can really leverage your tool that you, from what I understand, design for investors like ourselves. Now, I got to ask you, when you started this, were you servicing our needs specifically, or was this kind of across, referencing with, another industry? You kind of served another group, and then a lot of short-term rental folks started using it. Like, what's the connection of how you kind of broke into this space? Because all I hear is StayFi and why I should have it, and I'm curious as to where it originated from originally. Arthur?
Yeah, of course. So my background's in marketing. And I was doing marketing consulting for a short-term rental property manager out of Boston called Heirloom. And they operated rentals in New Orleans, Savannah, Nashville, Scottsdale, and a few other markets. So they were a large, more traditional property manager with, over 100 homes. And they wanted to develop an independent brand and become less dependent on OTAs like Airbnb and VRBO. So that was the objective of why they brought me in. And, looking at all the different avenues for driving direct bookings for their properties, the easiest or lowest hanging fruit seemed to be people that had stayed with them before, because they had homes with 10, 15, even 20 guests. And people who are familiar with the brand and have stayed with you before are going to be a lot easier to convince to book directly than some random person whose only brand they've ever heard of is Airbnb, right? And that's what they trust. So, objective was, how do we get people to book again? And obviously to do that, we need to collect their data, things like email and name. And so the original intention was, how can we design a tool that seamlessly introduces the brand and collects marketing data from everybody in the short-term rental? So that was kind of the objective of why they brought me in and what I wanted to accomplish for them. And so we looked at a bunch of different ways to do that. And one thing that we struck on was, why don't we collect it through the Wi-Fi the same way you log into the Wi-Fi at a hotel or a coffee shop or an airport? Because the Wi-Fi is the one touch point that almost every guest will use. And it's not something extra. It's not like an app they have to download or some extra hoops they have to jump through. It's like an activity that every guest is going to go through already. And I went out into the marketplace to just buy a solution. And it turned out all the ones that are designed and work great for hotels, coffee shops, airports aren't designed to work in short-term rentals. So the idea for StayFi was, how can we take this common hospitality practice of having a guest Wi-Fi system and build a system that works for short-term rentals? So that's where the whole idea of StayFi came from.
So when you say, because again, I think for context, I think we'll all be familiar with when we go to the airport and you got to put in, I like to put in joeshmo@gmail.com because I'm a marketer and I know what's going on and I don't want to be targeted. But most of us are going to go through that experience either at the coffee shop. You got to put a name, got to put an email address, that way. And like, so when you say that there wasn't a place for this in the short-term rental space, do you mean, at the level of like how big your package is? Like, I don't know what kind of packages or airports are being offered. Is there like a, certain amount of volume you have to have? Like, when you say that, can you be a more specific as to what that was that you saw the gap was where we weren't being serviced as short-term rental operators and owners?
Yeah. So I went to a few of the, I went to many of the existing companies that hotels and coffee shops use. Things like Beambox, Purple is another company. There's several out there that are pretty commonly deployed. Yelp Wi-Fi, so like Yelp acquired a solution. It's called Yelp Wi-Fi, which is pretty common in coffee shops. And there were like a few big issues with how their systems work. One is they typically have to be professionally installed. So the hardware that they're leveraging to launch these captive portals is not plug and play. So that was one solution we had to overcome. It's like, how can we just ship one thing to plug in and works and doesn't require any technical knowledge or expertise to set up? The other thing was price point. When you're selling to really high volume establishments, you can charge a lot more per location. So if you can imagine in a coffee shop, you may have hundreds of people come there a day. And so someone's willing to pay $80, $90, $100 a month for that service. But if you have a short-term rental where maybe only 30 people are coming a month or 50 people are coming a month, the price point per location has to be a lot lower, even though a large operator will have many more locations. And then the third thing was software that it interacts with or integrates with. Short-term rentals use a lot of specific property management software and marketing tools that are very specific to short-term rentals and aren't commonly used in other industries. So, the kind of best Wi-Fi systems for restaurants will integrate with a bunch of restaurant POS software or things like that, or restaurant or loyalty programs, right? So it's all about how do we develop a tool that meets the needs of short-term rentals, is easy to set up, is the right price, and integrates with tools that short-term rental operators already use. So that was kind of how we made a vertically specific guest Wi-Fi company that, isn't designed for other types of locations and is very short-term rental oriented.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that because, we talk about, one of the things we talk about as operators is your tech stack, right? Like, what is it that you're using from the time before the guest check-in, which, we use a PMS software, guest superhost, right? For example, there's people who use OwnerRez. I mean, there's tons out there. And then it's kind of like, okay, during the stay, who's, or even let's say on check-in, what are the smart locks that you're using? Does it integrate? I think that's one of the keywords, integration. And like, what I love about StayFi is that you're saying, this is something that the guests are going to do anyway. Everyone needs Wi-Fi. There's no pattern interrupt. There's no disruption to their day-to-day. It's, I need Wi-Fi. Here's how it pops up. Here's what I need to say. There's a lot there. So that's very interesting. I'm glad you said that. I think my key takeaway from what you're saying is the integration. Can you talk about some of the integrations for our listeners that you might have that might get their ears to perk up as of today, which is what are we in Q4? Already, or about to be Q? No, we are in Q4.
We're Q4 now, 10 days in.
Oh my God.
So there's
Q4 of 2022. Just for the record, what do we have? And I'm sure you're probably actively working on this product, the beauty of software. But what do you have to date today as far as integrations go?
Yeah, so there's kind of a few things. One is I can talk about this on many different levels, and I'd say our software is used by really large operators like 500 plus homes and people all the way to one. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about like what we see with people like sub 10 properties, because it's a little bit of a different tech stack as you grow. It just evolves over time. But I would say for smaller operators, there's a few things. One is we have email and text marketing tools within our product, as well as integrate with very common ones that people use. So let's say in short-term rentals, the most common we see is MailChimp. And so we integrate obviously with that. And so all the data we collect through StayFi can be sent to MailChimp automatically whenever a guest logs in. And we integrate with a ton of other commonly used ones in the space. Most common ones I see are like Constant Contact, Active Campaign. And then there's like 15 others we integrate with that are way less common. But we have our own email tool that's built on Campaign Monitor. And why that's important is that I find that in this space, you wear a lot of hats, especially as a smaller operator, because you can't hire and outsource everything that you're doing. Like you can't hire and outsource for marketing and listing optimization. There's like so many different tasks you have to do. We kind of built it as marketing in a box. So we have kind of canned templates and automations within our email tool that people can just leverage right away. That's already become kind of like designed for you. And then you just add and apply your branding to them. So we make it really easy for people that are not proficient in email marketing to get started and automate marketing messages after the guest joins the Wi-Fi. And then when it comes to PMS integrations, which is one that comes up a lot, right now we have two that I would call like our kind of we're redoing them. It's like our advanced PMS integration with OwnerRes and Guesty, which are definitely popular. And what those do is ingest any marketing data you have in your PMS into our marketing tools as well. So if you have been collecting some real emails in your PMS already, whether it's OwnerRes or Guesty, and then soon to be launched with many more, those will also come into our email marketing tool. So you have one tool that's automatically getting any data from your PMS that can be used for marketing, as well as any data you're collecting through your StayFi Wi-Fi. So it's one CRM or marketing tool that's pulling from all the different sources of data automatically. And then we do some other cool things like occupancy alerting on top of marketing. So we can measure how many people are in a property. And so with those PMS integrations, it becomes dynamic, where instead of having a static occupancy limit for a property, it will be based on the reservation that's currently there. And we're going to roll that out with a few more PMSs, kind of both those features.
Is that driven by sound? Like very similar to...
No, it's based on how many devices have connected to the Wi-Fi in terms of unique users over a period of time.
Oh, so if you get like, and so that will give, so let's say you have 6 guests and, you know, there's like 20, right? A party of 20. Are you saying that that's where we're going? You'll be able to see, hey, notification, you have 20 people logged into the...
Exactly, yeah. And we're counting unique guests, not just devices. There's some products on the market that count the number of devices in a home, which can be not always accurate just because someone can have 5. I mean, it's not uncommon to have 3 or 4 devices, right? Or some people might have 0 or 1. So we are actually counting unique people who log into the Wi-Fi. So just another angle to approach occupancy. None of the solutions are perfect, obviously, other than literally being there and counting every single person that comes into the home.
Yeah.
But it's just one more approach, and you know, having it based on reservations can be super helpful, because even though the max occupancy for a home may be 10, if someone booked for 2 and you see 7 people there, you still want to know that they actually are having more people than they said were going to stay there, because that might impact cleaning fees or other parts of your business.
And is that going to be a notification, or is that going to be just like a...
It's an email notification to the whoever you set up within StayFi.
Is that going to be based on threshold, or is that going to be based on just you, like every time, like if the threshold surpasses by X amount, like what are, do you guys have the rules defined? Are you that deep, or I'm just curious?
Yeah, so it's just whenever the unique number of users surpasses whatever you set the threshold to be, everyone has the ability to set a static threshold. And then for now rolling out our new PMS integrations, it will be dynamic based on the reservation. So right now we have Guesty and OwnerRes, like I mentioned, and then we're going to be launching with Hostfully, Uplisting, Hostaway, Track, a bunch more in Q4. So that's really one of our big focuses for this quarter, is just building out that same integration with 10 to 20 commonly used PMS systems, which there are, and I'm sure you know, many out there. So it's still a pretty very what's the right word? There aren't just a few players, there are just a ton of them. It's a very fragmented industry so far in that space.
Absolutely. So give us some context for those of us who are either listening and they don't have you on camera or anything like that, but give us an idea of like what this workflow looks like. And really, you're also giving me an idea, because after this call, as soon as I finish, I'm putting my order in for our multiple properties so we can have this, because this is something I've been talking about in my network as far as like being able to leverage, the emails. And, I come from a marketing background, so we can do a lot of things like creating a lookalike audience, which, I think is key in marketing if you know anything about retargeting. So what does that look like? What are we talking about here? Are we, how do we get started? And how does it look like in my home?
Yeah, so I would say the first kind of prerequisite to StayFi is the ability to accept bookings directly. So that's kind of like where I tell people to get started before they even come to us, right? And I think it's pretty natural as people grow their short-term rental business to go from being maybe on just Airbnb and Vrbo to getting a PMS, listing on many channels, developing a brand, and then I just spoke to somebody today who started their business in 2003, and then Vrbo was where only place they listed. And then they just went over over the last 20 years, all the things Vrbo did to their business and how they ended up being like, we have to build our direct booking business because being dependent on one or two platforms is really dangerous because they can change the rules at any time. And they don't, no one is really big enough that they're like worried about, they pretty much a duopoly in this market and they can set whatever rules they want and you guys don't really have much recourse, right? So decreasing that dependence and accepting direct bookings, that's really the core thing that has to be your objective, right? So that's what I tell people. If that's what they're, yep.
Let me ask you, I'm going to throw a caveat to that, or actually play devil's advocate, because I know this happens a lot in this. We have a lot of this discussion behind the scenes. I don't know. Well, you probably know, but a lot of the folks who have book direct kind of software, kind of saying, hey, or book direct kind of businesses, it's kind of like, hey, like never build your land on somebody else's business. But I think I look at your person. I look at StayFi a little bit different because I look at it as more of a leverage point rather than being solely dependent on OTAs, leveraging the OTAs and having a tool like yours so then I can one day shift to direct bookings and or be able to, again, my end goal would be building a lookalike audience because some would argue, and again, depending on your market, I think there's a lot to say about, like, let's say vacation markets where they take the family there every single year to this part of town, or whether it's Florida, let's say, every single year, or Thanksgiving they go to this property and you're constantly being booked through Airbnb or whatever the case might be, versus now it's like, hey, we actually can book direct because we'll save fees. And how did we know? It's because they emailed us and they were able to reach out to us, and now we book with them and everybody wins, right? But one would argue that, well, these OTAs have control a lot of the traffic. People don't say, hey, I'm going to stay at the Arthur's property. They say, I'm going to book an Airbnb. So that's where the kind of the traffic is. I see the opportunity as being more, okay, great, but now there's an extra tool that allows you to get control of the audience because Airbnb is not giving you, or Airbnb is not giving you the email per se. Do you see it that way as well? Or do you see it more as like, this is strictly for someone who is trying to take their business offline, or rather, I think I see it as more this is someone who understands the power of leverage and why they should actually have control of their list?
Oh yeah, no, I mean, we're not advocates for like delisting from OTAs at all. It's really about, how every time you get an OTA booking, somebody's paying the OTA, right? Whether it's you or the guest, or it's hidden in fees, or you share them, right? It's taking a piece of your revenue, right? And you're paying to acquire that guest, just like how you would pay to acquire them if you did search advertising or Facebook advertising, right? There's a cost for acquiring guests on the OTA, just like there's a cost for doing search ads, right? Or cost for any other way you would acquire them on your own website. And we really want to make sure that, you pay the OTA to acquire this guest. They come and stay with you. We just want to make sure that you get their data and the data of the folks they're traveling with, so that if they ever want to return to your destination or book with you again, they're coming to you directly, right? And so if you see a pattern of people booking you multiple times through an OTA, that to me is like a prime example of how StayFi can make a big difference for your business. Just because while we don't want to take OTA bookings and like convert them to direct bookings and like cause problems with that first booking, we just want to make sure that if they book with you again, that they're coming to you directly and that they are aware of your brand and that you're not just a quote unquote Airbnb, right? We want to develop that your brand has value outside of Airbnb, and that you're bringing an exceptional experience or whatever the guests may be looking for, that you're responsible for that experience, not Airbnb, and that brand value should live with you as the operator and not Airbnb, because Airbnb doesn't operate properties, right? So, we definitely are all for listing as many places as possible, but just making sure that every listing you get or every guest you get, you're making sure that you can follow up with them directly and market to them, because inevitably when they do want to come back to you, you want to make sure that your brand is also top of mind, so that they go, oh, I'll check with them and Airbnb, right? Like, I'm not going to assume they're only going to check with you, but if they've stayed with you before, there's a much higher likelihood they're going to be willing to stay with you again and book directly with you if you've been able to stay in contact with them, for the subsequent months after they stayed with you the first time. But yeah, now I can go back to your original question of like, what does this all look like and what do we recommend, right, for most people? The way it works is within StayFi itself, you create your branded captives page, which is what the guest logs in through in order to access the Wi-Fi. In order to get that set up in a property, you buy a device from us called an access point. We use Ubiquiti access points, which are super common. And if you have them, which actually happens more than you may think, we can use ones that are already installed. So if that's the case, you just let us know. But typically someone would purchase this from us. It plugs into a home's router, and you can leave the Wi-Fi running in the home as is. The access point we sell will broadcast a new network, and when a guest joins that network, that's when they get this captive splash page. Once the guest gets the captive splash page, they enter their information, hit connect, and then they're authorized to use the Wi-Fi for the rest of the stay on that device. So every guest typically logs in once per device. All the emails we capture are verified using a service called Zero Bounce. And so if guests enter in a fake email on the splash page, like the one you mentioned before, it will actually reject it, and they have to enter a valid email in order to get online. So all the emails we collect won't bounce. Then you can decide, how do I want to market to these guests? And I think it's important to remember you're capturing the data while they're in the property. So it gives you an opportunity to automate messaging to all the guests staying there that can add value during the stay. And so you can either use a tool in MailChimp called a drip campaign or automation, or if you use our own campaign monitor tool, we have things called automations in there as well. And what the automation will do is trigger an email automatically when a guest signs into the Wi-Fi, and then subsequent emails based on whatever cadence you want to set up. So we definitely recommend triggering an email to every guest when they log in, letting them know about your brand, who you are, perhaps sharing local recommendations, and letting them know how to book again directly and the advantages around doing that. And those emails will get super high open rates, like above 60%, because they're very time-based. Log into the Wi-Fi, get an email, and then we recommend setting up a series of subsequent emails sent 7 and then maybe every 30 days. And that way you can set up a series of emails sent to every guest automatically on a schedule. And therefore, you can set up emails one time and make sure people are getting a series of relevant marketing messages both during and after the stay. So that's what we kind of like typically recommend people can set up. Then there's like a bunch of other additional fancy things you can do in our platform. Things like if you use a digital guest guide, like a TouchStay or Hostfully or Folio, you can in StayFi associate a guidebook to each property you create in our system. And then in emails or even text marketing, you can insert those links dynamically. So just like we have email, we have a welcome text service. So you can text every guest after the login to the Wi-Fi. And there, for instance, you can text them a link to the guidebook for that specific home. We find that very useful if you've invested in those products, because it gives easy access to non-booking guests to that information. Because typically in a PMS flow or hospitable flow of automated messaging, you're only going to be communicating with the booker. And the key difference is with StayFi, once someone logs into the Wi-Fi, you can automate messaging that's reaching the entire guest party. And, putting information like your digital guest guidebook, your direct booking link, information on your website about recommendations or other things you can do in the area, that's going to get that information to all 10 people, because the booker may not be the decision maker either, right? So we just want to make sure we're reaching everyone with relevant information during the stay and then after the stay, obviously.
Experimentation,
I always experiment. And the reason why is I'm always trying to find the best tool, the best method, and the best vehicle to help me get to my end goal. One of the tools that we use in the short-term rental space is Guesty for Hosts. Now, Experimentation, you know that I love to test things, and I wouldn't be sharing with you anything that I don't use myself. As a short-term rental superhost, Airbnb superhost, listings that we own and co-host at the same time, I can tell you that there's no better software that allows us to streamline our business. Right now, currently, there's actually 3 properties right now that are currently where guests are checking in, and I'm here with you, and I did not need to send in check-in instructions for these current properties, right? There are multiple ways that you can streamline your operation from on the front end and on the back end, from being able to create a website, from being able to get income reports for your team, to looking at statistics, to setting up auto reviews, to integrating your smart lock so that you don't have to sit here and send every day and remind yourself to send the passcodes for your smart locks. No, instead you can integrate directly the exact same way that you can actually send your cleaners a link so that they don't have to remind themselves when they need to go to cleanings. There's text reminders that go out. There's links that can go out for them. This is a tool that if you're looking to give a smooth experience for your team on the back end, it will truly reflect, and it does, for your guests on the front end. Make sure you go to host.guesty.com and use our unique link. Our unique link will be in our bio, in the show notes. If you're currently watching this, you'll see it right here at the bottom of my screen. Use this unique link so that you can tell Guesty that I sent you. You don't want to miss out on this. You need a PMS, property management software, in your business if you're looking to operate like a super host that you deserve to be, so that your guests can have the best experience that they deserve to have at your properties. Again, that host.guesty.com. Use our unique link that is here on the screen, in the bio, and in the show notes if you're listening to this, guys. Happy hosting.
Can you guys, I'm just very curious because I think I had a conversation with Bill about this when I had him on my, we just launched an episode one live today, but we talked about targeting the booker differently than you charge, than you book, than you communicate with the other ones who didn't book. But what you said that stands out to me is, the booker might not always be the decision maker too. So, what tools, or is there any tool that you're, when it comes to layering or putting a tab on a specific person, like is there such functionality, and what you suggest is, maybe I should stop there. Is there such a functionality where you can segment, the person who booked, who used a credit card versus those who didn't, for whatever, for testing purposes?
Sort of. It's not easy to do necessarily, because let's say they book through Airbnb, right? We only have maybe their name in the PMS and some fake Airbnb email, and then they come in and log into the Wi-Fi, right? And maybe that information isn't exactly matching, or even if they book directly and they have owner res or guesty, we may ingest their email into our email marketing tool, but then when they log into the Wi-Fi, they actually use the email that they use more often, right? And then we don't really know that they're the same person. So it's theoretically sounds wonderful. I think in practice, very difficult to do. I'd say definitely possible, but hard. And kind of is the juice worth the squeeze, right? Some things are possible, but to make them operational and effective could be very difficult and time consuming, and you're making a bunch of segments in our email marketing tool based on the source, and does it match other data, and is it really going to give you that much more ROI sending them different messaging? So I'd say, in our industry at least, most people are not doing even the most basic things. So starting with that, and then I think layering on complexity. There are definitely cool things you can do with email marketing through our tool. If you are connected to a PMS we work with, things like if somebody has a future booking, you can suppress promotional content in email and not show it to them, right? There's all these very cool advanced things that when we talk to agencies that work with very large brands that they do. But I think for most people getting started, it's kind of get the most basic fundamentals down, and then you can layer on more complexity and segmentation as you go along. And that's definitely the way I would advise people to approach it.
100%, 100%. And just again to recap, you say that you can leverage like, the MailChimps of the world, etc., and integrate with those, but you also have a proprietary one, or is it just leveraging others?
Yeah, so the one within StayFi is a white labeled version of Campaign Monitor.
Yeah.
Very transparent. Like we just went to email marketing tools and found one that fits within StayFi the best. And it's great because you just get a discounted Campaign Monitor account. So you pay less when you use it through us. And then we actually partnered with an agency called Switchback Email Marketing. And so you can self-manage, right, and do everything yourself. But there's one-time as well as recurring services that you can purchase through us. So for instance, you can purchase, I think for $2.99, like they will give you an hour training, help you set up an email, do basic things in your account. And then you can even pay more and get them to like build you some custom templates.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the ability to, if you want to use an agency that works with short-term rentals only, you can purchase those services through StayFi, or you can do it all yourself. It's really just totally up to you. And similar with text marketing, we actually have our own tool that we built. So the actual kind of features in there are all custom built for StayFi. And that includes texting people when they log into the Wi-Fi with whatever you'd like, including merge tags that are like specific to the property they're in, collecting reviews. So you can actually filter for 5-star reviews. And if someone rates you 5 stars, send them to Google or your own website or Facebook to rate you. And if they leave you less than 5 stars, getting some private feedback. And then you can, of course, just text everybody a promotion or whoever you want, for who's ever opted in for text marketing. So those are kind of like the two main marketing pieces within StayFi. One that's just white labeled Campaign Monitor, the other our own texting tool. And then you can also add Facebook pixels to your splash pages. So if you are more adept at social media marketing, what a Facebook pixel allows you to do is to serve ads to everybody that's viewed that page. So you can construct an audience in Facebook Ads Manager that is everybody who has been through your StayFi splash pages. And that way, if you want to serve people, let's say Instagram ads or Facebook ads, after logging to the Wi-Fi, if you're targeting that audience, they will immediately start to see your ads. So it can be kind of cool if you want to run an Instagram campaign towards people that are staying in your properties. They will literally log into the Wi-Fi and then your content will start appearing in their Instagram feed. And it's very inexpensive to do very small audiences. And so if you just have an audience of a few hundred or 1,000 past guests, you can serve them all ads for a few dollars a day and make sure that they are following and interacting with your content. And I think they'll recognize your brand, obviously, because they're actually staying in the property.
Wow, that's genius. I had no idea that you guys had taken a step further with the Facebook pixel.
The thing with the Facebook thing is I find, most property managers are not comfortable setting up Facebook ads or using that tool. So I think it's an underutilized feature, and we're looking for ways to make it easier for people to do that. Just like email and texting, I feel like, since most operators are not marketers by training, right? Everything we do is trying to just give people accessible and easy to use tools. They don't require a lot of expertise. And then obviously you can build on it from there. So that's definitely the approach we take to all the different things we're building at StayFi.
Yeah, that's what I love, the world of marketing and short-term rentals. It'd be interesting to hear about, you mentioned that Switchback company that offers kind of like a, white glove approach of, helping people do it if they can do it themselves. That'd be interesting to see if you guys partner with folks who have that expertise or kind of create a premium kind of offer of like, hey, like, let's just sit back and we'll just do it for you.
Yeah, we definitely want to cover all those different use cases, right? So, we have customers that use Switchback to manage all their campaigns on an ongoing basis, and they love it. And they get great ROI, right? I think it's one of those things where maybe people have tried email marketing and they send a few emails and they don't get the results they were hoping for and they just abandon it. I think the thing about email marketing is it's about keeping your brand like top of mind. Like if you think about it, if you are getting a retailer's email, like, I don't know, a clothing brand, you might get their emails every week and you may only buy, from their 1 out of 100 times they send you an email, but you remember their brand and you may go to their website directly or finally view one of the emails to purchase. And if you think about short-term rentals are even more of an infrequent purchase than clothing, right? Or another type of direct-to-consumer product. So I think you have to remember that staying in the email inbox will keep your brand persistent, top of mind. Don't want to overkill it and have people unsubscribe. But then when they are ready to make a purchasing decision, they will remember your brand and perhaps go to one of your emails, click through, or they may go to your website directly. So there is always spillover of when you send emails. Not every booking is going to be directly attributable to an email because they may be seeing your brand in their inbox and then go to your website or Google your website directly when they're ready to make a purchase or contact you. So it's important to remember that as well.
100%. Split testing at all time, and with the right tool, you'll always been in a position to conquer that way. Well, listen, Arthur, it's been really cool, man. I geek out on this stuff because I have a marketing background and I'm also on short-term rentals. So you are preaching to the choir, and I'm, your avatar for sure. So much that, I can say it on the air here that we're going to be ordering ours. I know that we had talked about this offline, and I just thought I'd take the time to extract as well on a live call and educate the rest of our community as well. Sounds like if you don't have this in your current homes or in your multiple units, you definitely want to leverage this as a tool to, what I would say, gives you the opportunity. You always want to be in an opportunity to be in control and have leverage in this industry, and an advantage in a touch point and a control of your brand. So with that said, Arthur, where can we, for those of us who are listening, who are like, okay, I really need to take advantage of this, I know the link, of course, but hearing it from you, how can you proudly kind of give us insights as to where we might be able to get in touch with you and get the actual product into our home? Where's the
So if you go to StayFi.com, anyone can go ahead and sign up. So there's no contracts with StayFi. It's all a month-to-month service. The service ranges from $4 to $7 a month, depending on per property, just depending on how many you have. So it's all kind of volume-based pricing. All that's available on our pricing page on the website if you're curious. On there's also a demo page, which has a 5-minute video of how you actually set up StayFi and how it works, as well as the ability to book a demo if you want to have one with one of our team members. If you want have more questions or want to kind of have a 20-minute walkthrough, we're happy to do a demo with you. But if you sign up for a StayFi account, you can actually look through all the different pages, make a splash page, and order equipment. And we advise you what device to order based on the size of your home as well. So you can go through the whole process and set it up without ever speaking to us. But of course, if you want more information, you can also book a demo or contact us after you order a device. So it's really up to you. A lot of people never contact us and are able to do the whole thing by themselves because it is really that easy. But of course, people sometimes have extra questions or want extra advice, and we're always happy to talk with you if that's the case.
Awesome. And you can also always check out this podcast. I think there's tons of information here, but obviously going straight to the source. Here, you have the team and the infrastructure in place to allow people to engage with your business at StayFi.com. So with that said, Arthur, thank you so much for stepping into the lab. We'll make sure we include all that into the show notes, and you will certainly be seeing my email there as part of your list as a member of user of StayFi for sure. So be on the lookout for that experimentation, and then I'll be recording the video on social media as well, kind of unboxing, so to speak, and kind of showing how we roll that out. Either it might be remotely if we're not there myself, but I want to show you guys that you're always only just one experiment away. So thank you, Arthur, for coming in. And just like that, we are out.